Normally, this will be an author biography. However, we have no idea who wrote Beowulf. We don't even know the original guy. We only know that the version that we have was written by this Christian monk. And that's probably a copy of another book, but then again, this is just the history of Beowulf, so we'll talk about this ourselves. Huntington presents the history of Beowulf. Today is March 15th, and let's get started. Beowulf is a pretty complex story. There is a lot that we can learn about it, and there is a bunch of heroic stuff about it too. Instead of a character development, we get a character lesson sheet, where every time you kill a monster, you learn a lesson. At least according to Beowulf himself. But how was this kind of thing? How is Beowulf even found? What is the history behind Beowulf? All that yada yada kind of juicy bits of stuff that I myself am interested in. So let's just get this started with. So Beowulf was probably written, at least in our standards, sometime between 700 to 1000 AD. So it's basically between the time of the Middle Ages and the Vikings discovering America. Except no one knew that the Vikings discovered America because they decided it's just not worth it. Anyways, let's get back to the history of Beowulf and so sidetracking. Here we get this guy named a Christian monk. I'm just gonna call him Christian monk because we're pretty sure he's a Christian and we're pretty sure he's a monk. Why else would he write? Why else would he be able to know how to write? Anyways, we saw this guy to be able to write this manuscript, and he wrote that manuscript, and there was probably lots and lots of Beowulf manuscripts too. It's a pretty long poem, but it's not exactly an epic poem as well too. Nothing like Homer, nothing like Aristotle. No, not anything like that. It's just about 2,000 to 3,000 lines, somewhere in between, and that's nothing compared to the epics that we read today. So Beowulf was written sometime during that period, and we get this kind of story about it too. We found the manuscript in this abandoned church, and we found out that it is the only existing copy of Beowulf, at least until that day. But when we opened that manuscript, we saw words. But take a look at this. There were some words that were just... There were just some words that were not exactly English. Sorry if there was a little bit of a sound in the mic, I dropped it. Take a look at this. Triton. And then we get comitatus. This looks like English, but it doesn't sound like the kind of English that we know. By the time we found the book, we were already evolved into the modern English. This is Old English, we found out, but we have no idea how to translate it until we found a dictionary of Old English. And we already know how to read Middle English, and the dictionary was from Old English to Middle English, so great. Old English is also known as Anglo-Saxon, so that was pretty useful, and we eventually found out the meaning of these words. Like, Triton is a word often used in Beowulf, both for Christian lords and the earthly kings and leaders. Basically, it's a Christian king or a Christian priest. And comitatus basically means closely knit band. It's like a group of people close together. Anyways, we were able to translate the whole thing, and we eventually went into the development of Beowulf. Now, after we translated the whole thing, scholars speculated that if this was even English after all, if the poem itself was originally Old English or Anglo-Saxon, was it originally German or was it originally Danish? Lots of people, especially Germans and Danish people by the way, went ahead and tried to translate the whole thing into German and Danish just to find out, because it might sound more natural in German, might sound more natural in Danish, but all they found out was that this is the most natural version of Beowulf that we have existed today. Sure, the story itself might originally be German or Danish. I mean, it is set inside a story of the Germans and the Danish people, but that doesn't mean that it is written by a German or a Danish person. Afterwards, we look at it, we find out that the writing style and the talks about it, the lessons about it, the morals of the story itself are inherently Christian. So even though its characters are not Christian and are doing pretty anti-Christian things, they are teaching Christian ideals, or at least showing the ideas of Christianity inside there too. So that's how we found out that a Christian guy wrote the whole poem. Eventually, Beowulf was credited to be the first Old English poem, at least as far as we know, to ever exist inside the modern world. And that is kind of true, because it is also one of the only poems that exist in the modern world that is written in Old English. We went ahead and started analyzing it, especially the philosophers, thinking that there will be some kind of grand lesson, this whole point about it. Maybe it's just an allegory towards this Danish king who, living at the time, was pretty unpopular or something like that. But then some guy named J.R.R. Tolkien, you know the guy? You love him? You like him? You know his movies? It's the guy who wrote The Hobbit. It's the guy who wrote Lord of the Rings. J.R.R. Tolkien went ahead and refuted the challenge that Beowulf is of some sort of significantly importance. He stated that this is just some sort of entertainment. And this is his words. This is from his lecture Beowulf, the Monster and the Critics. He said that the poem was essentially a poem itself and not something that the scholar would have liked better. Not an allegory, a heathen heroic lay, a history of Sweden, a manual of dramatic antiquities, or a Nordic Summa Theologica. It's not some sort of fancy theology, it's not some sort of fancy allegory, it's just a poem for entertainment. It's just like the Greek myths. You just read it for the fun of it. There's no moral lessons, except the Greek myths had moral lessons, but this one doesn't really have moral lessons too. It tries to teach Christian ideals, yes, but it is not supposed to teach moral lessons. Its main purpose is to entertain the reader. Give them the story of Beowulf, not to do stupid things that Beowulf did. I don't even think you can meet Greldens or something as like Grelden in real life. But what you can do is you can live the stories of Beowulf, and you can do whatever you want with the book itself. Just read it. There's no point in trying to decipher a meaning, because there is no hidden meaning. There is no author's purpose. The author's purpose is to write something entertaining, and also probably teach them Christian ideas. But other than that, Christian ideals, teaching, there's no other hidden purpose. No criticism, no critique, nothing. No allegory, nothing. So how was this recepted in the modern day? It was recepted pretty well, actually. Lots of people credit the book to be a pretty good book as well, too. Some people think that it's a great book and that it's worth reading in places. It could be adapted into a movie. Also, I have yet to see a movie adapted from Beowulf. And it is surprisingly a great story, even with demons and even with dungeons and dragons. Yes, there is a dragon in the story itself. It's not just demons, people. We finally get something that is worth reading ourselves. It's just not just a knight book, it's a book about knights and killing monsters, as well as teaching Christianity. So that's it. That's the history of Beowulf. Fun fact, the existing copy, the original manuscript of Beowulf that exists to this day, is now being held at the British Library Museum, which it has been kept ever since the first time it was found. So, go visit it yourself, and why not read a page from it? I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope to see you guys soon, and so, until next time, Shnan out, peace, bye-bye!